He's Ukraine radio and television presenter. Ukrainians associate his voice with most official events. Ukraine radio broadcast from a shelter during the wartime. Dmytro Chorkin is my guest. Thank you for being here. It's my pleasure. Welcome to Czech Radio.
Thank you for the invitation. And first of all, I want to congratulate you and my Czech colleagues with the 100th anniversary of the beginning of the radio broadcasting in Czech Republic.
Thank you, Dmytro.
Osobnost Plus.
How does a life as a journalist change when your own country became a war zone?
We have a war in our country for 8 years, but the full-scale invasion of Russia was on the 24th of February last year.
We all remember that morning.
Yes, and we call it that very long day. That very long day, and that morning. I didn't sleep that night and that morning, and at 5 o'clock I heard first missiles attack in Kyiv, and we changed work of Ukrainian radio, and we had a special shadow of programs on our first channel, like your Radio Plus. We have a first channel, Ukrainian radio, only news, weather, and talk shows. And it was very difficult to manage this process.
What happened in first hours and first days? How complicated was change it to wartime broadcasting?
We prepared for a month for this day, and we had special studios in our bomb shelters. We had a special shadow of programs, and we had duties all night and all day of our radio hosts that days. For me, it was very difficult to understand what is it, and we didn't have any information from president, from government in the first hours.
Silent.
And I can't call to anybody. It was very difficult for us. And we united all signals. We have 3 channels. Ukrainian radio, the first channel. We have the second channel is a musical radio, like your Dvojka.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You are prepared. Well prepared.
We had the third channel, Radio Culture, is a radio theater and so on. And we have the international service, so Ukrainian radio. And we united all signals, all our radio transmitters in the first day of broadcasting. And we began a marathon for TV and for radio. That day I was a managing board member responsible for only radio, but later TV and digital, now in our structure, our company, National Public Broadcasting Company of Ukraine.
How different is the broadcast from a war shelter compared to under normal conditions?
In first days, difficult to work our journalists because without internet, without windows. But later we have Wi-Fi, internet, phone connection, and it's not difficult for our journalists to broadcast. But in the first 50 days, I was a TV and radio host of the main marathon. And we was on the special object, not in Kiev, and near the TV and radio tower. And this picture of the air missile attack of our Kiev TV and radio tower. That day I was here near this tower because the TV center is near this tower. But later in another region, Lviv region, on the western part of Ukraine, under this another TV and radio tower, we were here. And it was very difficult, dreadful. We saw these missiles and drones near this our object, but the first 50 days was the most difficult for us.
And is it possible to get used to it, or is it necessary to get used to it, broadcasting from war shelter? I mean, in logistic way, organization way.
We have 2 or 3 another resolve logistics ways for our broadcasting. We have a FM signal, and Ukrainian radio has 207 FM transmitters. And you know that FM transmitters, they use the signal from the satellite. But we use 2 ways, satellite and landlines. For the occupied territories and for the front line, we use AM signal. AM signal for big distance, 100 and 200 kilometers. For Mariupol, Crimea, Kherson, Izum in Kharkiv region, Bucha, Hostomel, Irpin in Kiev region, we use FM and AM transmitters for this broadcasting. And I want to tell you that in Mariupol, Ukrainian radio, in the first 2 months of occupation, Russia occupation, was the only Ukrainian media. Mariupol was without Ukrainian TV, without mobile connection, without internet, and only Ukrainian radio. We used another transmitter from another region, and we covered Mariupol. And the last days of evacuations, in Mariupol, people can listen only Ukrainian radio, and we and our special services and army center, we used our Ukrainian radio.
If I would visit your broadcasting company, if I would visit your newsroom or your broadcasting studios, would I see different compared to normal situation? Would I recognize the difference?
No. No, it will be not a big difference. But if I show you our special bomb shelter and studios, you can understand it.
What is a special bomb shelter and studios?
Oh, after the war, I can say.
Okay.
As a bomb shelter and our studios for TV and radio, a lot of meters under the land. But now we have a newsroom like your Czech radio. We have the same studios with video and audio broadcasting. It's not a big difference. I think that during this war, 1 year and 5 months, it became normal for us. But yesterday, in the State Opera, after the concert, I think that I heard the sirens. And it's a big problem for all Ukrainians. We hear sirens, mystery sirens everywhere. And now we have two programs on Ukraine radio about the mental health. It's very important for our audience. About fakes, but the most our shadow, it's a live news programs every day.
In the Czech radio, we have to often say that it's not possible to verify independently information from the front line. How do you verify the information?
We have a rule. We wait for some hours or even some days to verify this information. We have reporters in all our regions and on the front line. And we wait for verifying this information from our reporters, our journalists. We use official government channels to check this information. But it's very difficult to understand is it false or true. But for the main TV and radio political talk show that we have a rule. We wait for one if we have some sensations.
Did you make some mistake?
No serious mistakes for this period. Was a mistake about some surname or name of our warriors.
How many reporters do you have at the front line?
On the first front line, we have 10 or 15 reporters. They were not reporters on the front line before the war. It's a new reality for them. And we have some reporters in Kherson region, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, Luhansk, and Kharkiv regions, and we have special reporters on the front line from Kyiv, the main our studio. It's very dangerous. It's very dangerous. We teach them with a special team about for the working on the front line. And during this time, we have two our journalists that was kidnapped in Mariupol, and now we have 75 my employees are in the army.
And how do you protect them at the front line? Is only to prevent, only teaching program, or is it there some possibility how to protect them, because it must be very dangerous, as you mentioned?
You can't go on the front line without our army and without training and without special press officers of Ukrainian army. And during this time, the reporting, their press officer near with them. And they know more silent districts for the air and artillery attacks.
Foreign reporters simply have the possibility of leaving the country and taking some time off. Is it possible even for your journalists, for your reporters, to have some physical help and psychological help and
mental health,
and mental relax, if I could say?
Yes, we have, and a lot of our journalists from the front line, some someone change their profile of job. They didn't leave radio, but or TV, but they have another profile of their job about theater, about sports, and so on programs. And we have a special team in our TV and radio company that help with mental health. For our journalists, for our reporters, because it's very difficult for them. The most difficult situation in Kherson and Mykolaiv region, because Kherson was occupied, and my journalist was kidnapped by Russian occupators.
Dmytro Chorkin, Ukrainian journalist and producer of Ukrainian Public Radio, is my special guest.
Posloucháte Osobnost Plus. Rozhovory s významnými lidmi české společnosti. Premiéra od pondělí do pátku po 10:30 na Plusu.
Suspilne in Ukraine Public Radio is one of the most important sources of news for a country of 40 million people. How complicated is to stay in touch with the occupied territories?
For 8 years, we have a war and occupied Crimea and some regions of Donetsk and some districts of Donetsk and Lugansk region. And before my position of the general producer of Ukrainian radio, I was the first radio host of Russian service of Ukrainian radio. We have special programs and special broadcasting for occupied territories. We use AM transmitters, AM waves, and we speak only in Ukrainian language. They understand Ukrainian language, and we don't have any problems. But in the first few years, we had a Russian language for them.
Do you have feedback from people who are living there?
They can call.
And how do they respond to your news coverage?
We can't research about occupied territory, but they can text us. They can call. On my programs, they quote from Crimea, from Kerch. Bridge. It was very interesting.
How do you verify information from occupied territory by Russian army? Is it more difficult to do it on Ukrainian territories?
It's more difficult, but when we see photos, we can have audio, and we don't have reporters of our Ukrainian radio and Ukrainian public TV, but we can use materials from the international agencies, news agencies. But to verify is very difficult. And I want to say that this war is not only war in air and on the land with artillery and jets. It's a war in missiles. It's a war in media, online, and they use fakes, they use fake videos, documents, and we must verify this information.
Is there danger or threat or possibility of Russian propaganda infiltrating your news coverage?
No. I think that in Ukraine we can see all situation, but I think that Russian propaganda works well in other countries, because we listen and understand their voices. It's like vaccination. We have a vaccination. Ukrainian people have a vaccination from Russian propaganda, I think.
They are more sensitive to recognize what is Russian propaganda than we are in the Western countries.
Yeah, and they think that they can use Ukrainian language without knowledge, and then use Google Translate, and they have big mistakes when they write in Russian propaganda in Ukrainian language. It's sometimes very funny information, because we have the same Slavic languages, but we have another words. I can't. It's very difficult in Czech or in English language to understand, but it's very funny situations.
Your country is attacked by the aggressor, part of the territory is occupied, civilians and soldiers die. Is it possible to stay objective and uphold the basic journalistic rule of impartiality in this situation?
It's very difficult to stay objective, but everyone must ask, who am I? I'm a journalist or I'm a patriot of Ukraine. And I think that for our public broadcaster, with our values and journalist standards, we must verify all information. We must have balance of thoughts in our programs. And the main problem is to verify information. We wait, we call, we go to this city or town to verify this information.
How the war changed your thinking of journalism?
We understand that we have now we have a critical role for our people, for our audience, and they need our information, and we do our we broadcast and do our reportings from some different dangerous places, because we understand that our audience needs us, and radio have a critical role for our people, not after missile, not only after missile attacks, but blackouts. When some cities were without electricity for day, 2 days, 3 days, and only radio with batteries, and audience can listen about Ukraine, about war, about some emergency services, how do they work in this situation. And now in these minutes, I have a chart. We have a blackout in the center part of Kyiv. But our Ukrainian radio objects and buildings, we have a special electricity. And we didn't stop our broadcasting only for a minute, for a second.
Wow. Your colleague Mykola Chernotsky said this to Chernotytsky, I'm sorry, I apologize, to the Fix, and I quote, "On the evening of February 24, Suspilne was taken over by the government. I think it was a bad decision. It was soon fixed and we got our broadcast back, but this decision was the most difficult."
It's a situation about TV broadcasting, TV.
Okay, but still, yes, we speak about public broadcast.
Public broadcaster, and radio had another different, but it was a mistake. But later, we, Suspilne, became a part of this information use government marathon. And now we produce this marathon.
But I wanted to ask for public broadcaster how to prevent this from beginning a part of Ukraine propaganda or Ukraine government position.
We have, from the first days, we have a special martial law, by presidential martial law. And it's very difficult to stay independent in this situation. But we didn't have censura on TV and radio, on our public TV and radio. And we show in our programs, and we have guests from all parties, political parties of Ukraine. And in first weeks we had with Mykola some problems with mistakes of government, of Ministry of Culture Information Policy about marathon. But now we are the part of this marathon. We produce this marathon.
Do you have to consultate or coordinate publishing information with Ukraine army?
No.
Because it could be dangerous somehow if you would publish some information
we use
secret.
A lot of experts and consultants, but I don't have some from the government.
Okay. How do social networks and messenger apps influence your job? I mean, is it a good tool because it could help you having information?
It's help us. But in Ukraine, we have a very popular message Telegram. And a lot of media, they have their pages here. But there are a lot of fakes.
That's what I wanted to ask.
Fakes.
If it's a tool which could be...
We have our page. But we have verified information. But it's not popular because people want to know some sensations or secrets, insights from government and from army.
You joined radio when you were only 18, if I am right. Why?
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 It was my dream, and I was a radio host and narrator. And I was a student of the geographical faculty of Kyiv University, but I wanted to be a radio host, and I called on the radio and became a radio host of the on the Radio Culture, on the third channel of Ukrainian radio. But later, I needed money, and I became a voice-over actor of Ukrainian film, cinema industry. And later on presidential ceremony surveys, they called me to announce president. It was Yushchenko, and after that was Yushchenko, Yanukovych, Poroshenko, Zelensky. And now even I am a presidential narrator, announcer in Ukrainian language.
Of course. Your country is at war. Is it even possible to live a normal life?
It's very difficult, but we try, because we must think about our mental health. For example, I go to the concert, classical music, to the gym. I rest with my friends, with my family, because it's very difficult. It's difficult for mental health now. A lot of people can, and my friends, I know, my friends, they can drink a lot. But it's very dangerous. But in Kyiv, we Sometimes I think that in Kiev and in another cities we have the illusion of normal life. We can see it in restaurant with wine or coffee, and in few seconds you can hear sirens and drones and air missiles.
Do you live in permanent fear?
Fear?
Fear, anger or dangers?
No. After Kiev TV and radio tower attack,
Dmytro Chorkin, Ukraine journalist and producer, was my special guest. Dmytro, thanks a lot for being here. Thank you for the interview.
Thank you for the
pleasure.
invitation.